Hello everyone. Get ready for a breathtaking story filled with family secrets, reunions, and a quest for redemption. Let's dive into the thrilling journey of Richard, a man who discovers the power of family connection where he least expected it. If you resonate with deep and transformative stories, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell to ensure you receive our upcoming inspiring tales. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We love to see how far these stories can touch hearts. Amidst the dazzling lights of New York City, Richard Lawson feels like a lonely spectator, even amid laughter and celebrations. The pain of losing his wife, Emily, weighs on his heart like an anchor. After a solemn night, he walks through the rainy streets and spots Sophie, a young homeless mother. What could have been just a gesture of compassion turns into something much deeper when, the next day, Richard finds Sophie kneeling in a cemetery before Emily's grave. The words she murmurs reveal a secret that could change everything. Sophie, the daughter he never knew existed, brings buried memories and conflicting emotions to the surface. As Richard delves into Emily's diary, he begins to understand the fragilities of the woman he loved. The pain of loss transforms into a search for redemption. During a stroll through Central Park, he opens up to Sophie and her son, Daniel, discovering a new purpose in his life. Moments of vulnerability and growth bind them together as Richard confronts the past and allows himself to feel again. What he didn't expect was that true family connection could be the key to his healing. The loneliness of Richard Lawson. Richard Lawson had always been a man of simple habits. He lived in a small house in the suburbs, surrounded by well-tended gardens, but his life was marked by deep loneliness. Every day, he woke up early, had breakfast alone, and left for work in an office that felt as empty as his home. Richard had few friends, and even their company was not enough to fill the void he felt. He spent his nights in silence, listening to the sound of the wind and reflecting on how his life had become monotonous. Time seemed to slip through his fingers, and he wondered where his hopes and dreams had gone. The walls of his home seemed to witness his solitude, holding secrets he shared with no one. Richard often felt like a spectator of his own life, watching the people around him but unable to connect with them. Memories of his youth surfaced in moments of sadness. Richard remembered the laughter, the adventures, and the promises of a bright future. However, as the years passed, he found himself trapped in a colorless, passionless routine. Loneliness became his only companion, and he questioned whether he would ever break this solemn cycle. One night, while flipping through an old photo album, Richard came across an image of his childhood, surrounded by friends. The smile on his face seemed distant, almost as if it belonged to someone else. This moment served as a reminder that loneliness was not his destiny but a choice he had made over the years. He knew he needed a change, but he didn't know where to begin. It was then that he decided he needed to leave the house more often, even if it was just for small errands or walks in the park. This simple decision would mark the beginning of a new chapter in his life, where loneliness would start to give way to the hope of new connections. Like the unexpected encounter with Sophie. On an ordinary day, Richard decided to visit a local bookstore, a place that always brought him comfort. As he wandered through the shelves, his eyes fell upon a young woman sitting in a corner, immersed in a book. She seemed so focused that he hesitated to interrupt her. However, something in the air made him approach. It was Sophie. Sophie looked up and smiled upon noticing Richard's presence. The exchange of glances was instantaneous, and somehow, he felt at ease. They began talking about books, a topic they both loved. Richard never imagined that such a simple conversation could evoke so many emotions. Sophie had a way of speaking that lit up the room and made Richard forget the loneliness that accompanied him. As the days passed, they began to meet more frequently. Their encounters at the bookstore transformed into strolls in the park and warm coffees on winter afternoons. Richard discovered that Sophie had a vibrant and lively outlook on life. She shared her adventures, experiences, and dreams, and he felt inspired by her energy. Sophie's presence brought a new sparkle to Richard's life, as if the colors had returned to being vibrant. He felt that perhaps loneliness was not a life sentence but something that could be overcome. Together, they explored not only books but also their stories and challenges. This unexpected meeting was the spark Richard needed. He began to realize that by opening his heart to new friendships, he could build a richer and more meaningful life. His friendship with Sophie became a bridge to a new world where loneliness would no longer have a place. Secrets from the past. As Richard and Sophie grew closer, he began to share some of his life experiences. But there were secrets that still weighed heavily on his heart. Richard hesitated to reveal details about his past, particularly the loss that had deeply marked him. It felt as though a shadow loomed over him, and he feared that this might drive Sophie away. Over time, Richard realized that in order to build a true friendship, he needed to be honest about his struggles. One afternoon, while walking by a lake, he decided to open up. With a racing heart, he told Sophie about the death of his brother years ago, an event that had changed the trajectory of his life. The pain was still palpable, and he felt vulnerable sharing this. Sophie listened attentively, taking her time, as if each word from Richard was a treasure. She understood the depth of the pain he carried, and instead of pushing him away, it only strengthened the connection between them. Richard realized that sharing his suffering did not make him weaker. On the contrary, it allowed him to free himself from a burden he had carried for so long. This conversation also prompted Richard to reflect on the importance of facing the secrets that confined him. He understood that by opening up, he was not only liberating himself but also inviting Sophie to do the same. Their friendship blossomed in a safe space where both could be authentic and vulnerable. Those past secrets, which had once been a barrier, became a bridge to understanding and empathy. Richard felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, motivating him to continue opening up to new experiences and relationships. Reflections. Through Emily's diary. Once, while organizing some things at home, Richard came across an old diary that belonged to his sister, Emily. Curious, he began to flip through the pages, each filled with thoughts, dreams, and reflections of the teenager she once was. Emily's words were like an echo from the past, bringing forth emotions he had buried. As he read, Richard felt as if he were reliving moments from his childhood. Emily wrote about her hopes, her disappointments, and above all, her desire to connect with the people around her. Through her words, Richard realized how loneliness affected not only him, but everyone around him, including his sister. Emily's reflections inspired him to reconsider his own life. He remembered how she always tried to bring the family together, even when things seemed difficult. Richard recognized that, like Emily, he too had the power to create new connections and strengthen the family ties that had been lost over the years. While reflecting on the diary, Richard decided it was time to honor Emily's memory. He began to write his own reflections, not just about his loneliness, but also about his hopes and dreams. This act of writing became a form of therapy, allowing him to express himself and connect with his deepest feelings. Emily's words served as a guide, showing Richard that vulnerability and the search for connection are essential parts of life. He realized that by sharing his own experiences and feelings, he could not only heal but also inspire others to do the same, creating a cycle of love and understanding. Building a new family relationship. Over time, Richard began to notice that his loneliness was not just a reflection of his social life. It was also a reflection of the disconnection that had settled within his family. He decided it was time to change that. Motivated by the desire to honor his sister's memory and by his new friendship with Sophie, Richard started to reconnect with his relatives. He made a list of people he wanted to reach out to, from cousins to uncles he hadn't seen in years. The first step was a simple message to his mother, inviting her over for dinner at his place. Richard was nervous but knew he needed to make this move. To his surprise, his mother was touched by the invitation and accepted immediately. The dinner turned into a family gathering. Richard prepared his favorite recipes, and throughout the evening, laughter and stories began to flow. He saw the joy in his mother's eyes and felt that he was finally breaking down the barriers that had formed over the years. The loneliness that had once surrounded him began to slowly dissipate. As time went on, Richard began organizing regular get-togethers, inviting different family members to join. These moments became essential in strengthening the bonds and creating new memories together. He realized that by opening up to his family, he was creating a space for everyone to connect and share their own stories. The new family dynamic brought a sense of belonging that Richard had never felt before. He recognized that loneliness was a choice, and by choosing to connect with those he loved, he was building a network of support and affection. What started as a simple dinner transformed into a new era of meaningful relationships in his life. Revelations and conflicts. Richard was used to leading a quiet life, but that changed when secrets began to surface. He had always thought he knew his family well, but the truth started to unfold in surprising ways. Casual conversations revealed stories he had never heard before. Richard's grandmother, for instance, mentioned a distant cousin who had moved abroad and, by chance, was returning to town. This simple mention triggered a series of memories and conflicts that Richard hadn't expected to confront. The revelation about the distant cousin brought unresolved family issues to the forefront. Richard found himself in the midst of a whirlwind of emotions, questioning what he really knew about his family. Why had he never heard of this cousin before? This lack of communication had generated a certain distrust, and Richard found himself in a dilemma. Should he seek more information or leave things as they were? This uncertainty led to internal conflicts, making him reflect on the importance of transparency in family relationships. Furthermore, Richard realized that this situation did not only affect him, but also everyone around him. His sister, who had always been close to him, began to feel insecure with the new information. She wanted to understand why these secrets were being kept and whether her family life was built on lies. The tense atmosphere during family gatherings became palpable, and Richard understood that he needed to take action to resolve these conflicts. Conversations became more frequent, but with each new dialogue, more revelations emerged. What was supposed to be a moment of unity was turning into an emotional battlefield. Richard and his sister tried to mediate the situation, but what seemed like a simple unfolding of stories transformed into heated discussions. It was evident that the revelations were stirring up the past, and each person had their own interpretations and feelings about what was being revealed. Amidst this turmoil, Richard began to understand that, although the revelations were challenging, they could also bring the opportunity for a new beginning. He realized that facing these conflicts was essential for the family's healing. It was necessary to speak, listen, and above all, understand each story that was emerging from the shadows of the past. Confronting the past. Confronting the past is not easy, and Richard was about to discover this in the hardest way. After the revelations, he decided it was time to gather the family and discuss everything that had come to light. The atmosphere was tense, and suspicious glances crossed at the table. Richard knew he needed to be the mediator, but at the same time, he felt his heart heavy with the weight of untold stories. The first person to speak was his mother, who began to share her own life experiences and the secrets she had kept. She revealed that she often felt pressured to keep certain information secret to protect the family. Richard realized that his mother was struggling to find the right words, and the sadness in her voice was palpable. He knew that confronting the past was not just about the stories that had surfaced, but also about the feelings of guilt and regret that were present. As the conversation continued, Richard found himself reflecting on his own experiences. He too had kept secrets, feelings of inadequacy, and fears he had never shared with anyone. Confronting the past became an invitation for him to open up as well. Richard realized that by sharing his vulnerabilities, he could create a safe space for everyone to feel comfortable speaking. The tensions began to dissipate a little when each family member started to talk about their own pains and regrets. What had once seemed like a hostile confrontation transformed into a moment of empathy. Richard saw his sister wipe away tears, and for the first time, he felt that the family was coming together instead of falling apart. This connection, even if painful, was an important step toward healing for everyone. Confronting the past did not mean merely recalling the pains, but also recognizing the good moments that had been overshadowed. Richard realized that despite everything, there was love and respect among them. It was time to leave the past behind and build new bonds, strengthening the family instead of letting it crumble. Path to healing. After the confrontations and revelations, Richard and his family were ready to move forward. The path to healing would not be easy, but it was essential. They decided they needed space and time to process all the emotions that had arisen. Richard proposed that each person write in a journal, expressing their feelings and reflections about everything that had happened. This idea was well received and brought a new meaning to communication within the family. In the following weeks, Richard noticed that writing was a great resource. He began to record his thoughts, and in doing so, he realized that healing does not come only from dialogue, but also from internal reflection. Each page written was a step toward understanding and acceptance. He and his family committed to meeting weekly to share a bit of what they had written, creating a safe space for vulnerability. These meetings became an important ritual. Initially, the conversations were hesitant, but over time, words began to flow. Richard saw how each person was opening up and allowing themselves to be vulnerable. He realized that healing did not mean forgetting the past, but rather learning to live with it. The shared stories, even the most painful ones, began to be seen in a new light, showing that each experience brings valuable lessons. The family started to support one another, and the atmosphere that had once been filled with distrust and fear transformed into one of love and understanding. Richard saw his sister smile more, and this made him realize they were truly on the right path. Each person was allowing themselves to be heard, and by doing so, they were building a new type of relationship based on respect and empathy. Healing is not a destination but a continuous process, and Richard understood that the journey with his family was just the beginning. They would still face challenges ahead, but now they were better equipped to face them together. With each step, the hope for a better future became more tangible, and the family connection strengthened with each passing day. Adoption of a new family. Dynamic. Richard Lawson's life began to change when he decided to open his heart to the possibilities of a new family dynamic. After facing loneliness and past conflicts, he realized it was time to leave old habits behind and create a more welcoming and harmonious environment. The idea of a new family might sound daunting, but Richard felt motivated to give it a try. He wanted his home to be a place where everyone felt comfortable and respected. With Sophie's help, he started to implement small changes. They began to have lunch together, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Conversation flowed naturally, and laughter began to replace the silence that had previously prevailed. Richard noticed that the children were more open to expressing themselves, which was a good sign. He knew that creating a new family dynamic required effort, but he was willing to do whatever it took. One of the most effective strategies was to establish family time, where everyone could share their stories and feelings. Richard proposed a game night, where each person could choose a board game or do something fun. This initiative strengthened the bonds between everyone, allowing them to see each other not just as relatives, but as friends. Joy began to return to the environment, and Richard felt increasingly hopeful. As the new dynamic solidified, Richard also recognized the importance of respecting each family member's space and individuality. He encouraged everyone to have their own hobbies and passions. This freedom brought a fresh air to the house, allowing each person to feel valued. Richard discovered that a harmonious home is not just about being together, but also about giving space for each individual to be who they truly are. Over time, the tensions that had once existed began to dissipate. Richard saw the transformation in his children, who now behaved in a more affectionate and understanding manner. The new family dynamic was not just Richard's project, it was a collective effort that brought positive and lasting results. He was convinced that, even with challenges, the family's new phase was just beginning. Redemption. Through music had always played a special role in Richard's life, but he had never realized its true power. When he started to adopt the new family dynamic, he decided that music could be a powerful tool for unity. Richard brought a guitar home and started playing for his children, who quickly showed interest. That simple action transformed into a ritual that brought everyone together around the instrument. Soon, music nights became an event everyone looked forward to. Richard and the children began to compose little songs together, mixing melodies and lyrics that reflected their experiences. Music became a form of expression, where they could share feelings that had been kept inside until then. Richard realized that through music, they were creating a safe space for communication. Music also brought moments of fun and relaxation. During the sessions, laughter and playfulness were frequent. Richard saw that the tension that had previously permeated the house was dissipating, giving way to joy and affection. The children felt more comfortable opening up and sharing about their days, which strengthened the family bond. The guitar was not just an instrument, it was a symbol of reconnection. Moreover, Richard began to recognize music's capacity to heal emotional wounds. In a moment of vulnerability, he shared a song that spoke of his fears and insecurities. To his surprise, the children were moved and began to talk about their own feelings. That moment of sincerity was transformative, and music became a bridge for empathy and understanding between them. Over time, music became a pillar of the new family dynamic. Richard not only rediscovered his passion but also helped his family find a new way to connect. Through songs, they learned to celebrate small victories and face challenges together. The redemption Richard sought did not come just from changing habits, but from the ability to connect authentically with those he loved most. As Richard reads the letter, a wave of emotion washes over him. He finally understands that Emily's life was not only marked by pain, but also by unconditional love. This revelation inspires him to seek a different future, one where the scars of the past become a source of strength. And what about you? Have you stopped to think about the power of the connections around you? Richard is now determined to create memories with Sophie and Daniel, knowing that every laugh and every tear shared is a step toward healing. He realizes that true family is not just about blood ties, but about the love we nurture. As we walk our own journey of overcoming, what can we learn from Richard? How can we transform our pain into opportunities for growth? Life presents us with challenges, but it's the way we respond to them that defines our path. So, how about reflecting on your own connections? Who is around you, ready to walk this path with you? Don't forget to leave your comment and share your story of overcoming. Let's inspire each other to find light even in the darkest situations. What moment in this story touched your heart the most? We really want to know. Leave your comment below and share your thoughts with us. Your opinion is essential and helps us bring more emotional stories. If you know someone who would also be moved by this story, don't hesitate to share the video with them. Let's spread messages that inspire and strengthen family bonds together. To not miss any new stories like this, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like. Your participation is very important to us. Thank you for watching, and see you next time for another exciting story.